All right, so why don't we introduce ourselves? Tell us your name, where you practice, the number of staff you have, and the types of work that you do.
I'm Greg Ward from the Ward Law Group. I practice law together with my wife, Hani Martinez Ward. We're located in Miami, Florida. We focus almost exclusively on the Spanish market. We have offices in Miami and in New York now. My wife is a Spanish-speaking attorney, and we started with the two of us, and now we're up to about 100 domestic people, 85 VAs in numerous countries, and I think last year we settled over $250 million worth of cases.
Let's tell them, when you first made that decision to get into a mastermind group, what did you think your challenges were as a law firm? When
we joined, we were about, I want to say 25 or 35 people, and we had a very collegial atmosphere. And I knew everybody's names. And there is a limitation to that. I was the trial lawyer, I was the guy, and I just said, I can't keep doing this. I'm limiting my impact and my ability to service my clients. And so when I joined Pilmma, first of all, I sat down and Jan Dills was incredibly intimidating because I saw how she ran her firm, and I thought, do I even belong in this group? Because she's so tough, right? And nothing against Steve. Steve was there too, but Steve is great too, but Jan was I was blown away. And so I just started saying, what can I do different? What can I do different? And they gave me permission to step away from that trial lawyer role and become a real CEO. And we haven't looked back ever since. Now, that also got us through, and here's another thing, we're all gonna have crises, right? I've had personal health issues. We had COVID. I had a retinal detachment. I was out of commission, literally on a bed for 3 months. And it's these relationships and the inspiration you get from like-minded people that helps carry you. Because my team, I love my team, but they don't care like we care. But I'm not going to court anymore, and that's okay.
So all of you guys are 8-figure members, which means at some point you were running a 6-figure law firm and then a 7-figure law firm. So what I want to know is, what do you think got you from 6 to 7 and from 7 to 8? What were the things that helped you scale as you moved along?
I'm going to go a little on the darker side, which is, because that's why I'm here. Ken loves it whenever I throw you gotta learn to offboard the people who don't support your vision or your culture. One of the biggest struggles we all have is when I started with those 25 people were my friends. I had a lady whose husband died of cancer who went to my church. And she was toxic. She turned toxic, and she got entitled, and she was taking other people down. And I had to fire her when I caught her lying to me. And she went to the pastor of my church and said, I'm a horrible human being. For real. She's still there. She's still there. And I told the pastor, I was like, well, let me tell you what actually happened. If you got an ego that's paper thin, forget it. You're in the wrong business, right? You gotta be able to fire your friends. I love all of my people. I love my team. I would not be here if it wasn't for my team. I feel like I got the best team in the business, at least as it relates to Miami. I'm sure you all feel the same about your teams, right? I'll die for my team. But if you're not fitting, you got to go. Great book, Cy Wakeman, Reality-Based Rules of the Workplace. The second thing I will tell you, this is a personal motivation issue. If you're in this room for the money, you are here for the wrong reason. The money is never enough. Everybody on the stage makes more than $10 million a year. That's great. But I can tell you it is not enough to get you out of bed. But like I said, with the retinal detachment, I went into depression. I had to lay in this thing. I actually thought I could retire. Do I want to give it up now? And if it was just about the money, I would not be sitting here today. I'd just retire and be spending time on the beach with my kids. And I'd be bored out of my mind. The money's not enough. And so if you just weren't thinking about the revenue is, as Jan says, it's a metric. I call it a barometer. The money is an indication of how successful and how efficient you are, especially your profit margins and revenue per employee. But if you're just doing it for the money, do something else. It's a lot easier to make money doing something else, I promise you.
I want you all to give this audience one takeaway.
I think the best piece of advice I got early in my career was, you can't bring everyone on your ship or your boat. I'm from Miami, we've got Cubans. You guys get the metaphor, right? You are going to want to save everyone. You're going to want to save your employees, you're going to want to save your clients, you're going to want to save, and sometimes these people are floating in the ocean, and you can only throw them a life preserver. Because if you bring everyone on your boat, you'll sink your boat. And so what I said earlier about, offboarding some people, that holds true here. But just remember, you've got to be intentional about the people who you serve as clients and the people you bring on as your team, because you're going to pour into your team. You're going to pour into your team. And by the way, while you're at it, be intentional about your friends too. Because we talk about this, and I can give you betrayal stories and painful stories. It's very painful at the altitude that we're all at. You lose a lot of friends. Be intentional about who you're trying to save with your friends. Because the other thing I will say is, if you're lucky enough to get one of these folks on the phone, and I know they will pick up the phone if you call, because I do it, listen to their advice, please. There's nothing more frustrating than, because many times we can see your problem right away, and then we give you advice, and you're going to spend 20 minutes arguing with us. That's not the real problem. Yes, it is. We were there. We did it. We know. And trust me, I lost a lot more money than you're about to lose on this, so trust me. Follow this, and they don't. So please, if you get the ear of someone on this panel or other people who've been in business a little longer and they've got good advice, listen to the advice. I'm always arguing with people. I just stop. I'm not going to give you any more advice. You know, it just is, right? It happens, right? People don't listen. It upsets you, and you're like, I'm not going to spend my time investing in you. But I'm here for you guys. If you ever want any advice, I'm happy to give it. But please, take the advice. It's free.
So I know when you guys all started, I know it was true with me, like we did everything, right? We answered the phone, we collected bills and records, we looked at advertising, we did our bookkeeping even, right? And we talk about how important it is to work on our business instead of in our business. I'd like to know from you guys, what was the hardest thing to stop doing? Was it marketing? Was it bookkeeping? Was it the practice of law? Was it HR? Maybe the most fun thing of all. Which part of the which part of the business was the hardest thing to hand to somebody else because it felt unnatural, or you just didn't want someone else to do it, or what do you think? What do you think it was?
The hardest thing for me to give up was negotiating cases. My wife is 15 years my junior in practice of law, and we're starting our practice together. So she's about a third year. I guess I'm an 18-year lawyer at this point, and I'm negotiating all the cases. And then she comes in, and I see her negotiate a case, and she kicked my butt. Like, it's not even close. Like, she negotiated some case, and then I was like, man, you're really good at this. How do you get so good? I've been negotiating cases for 18 years. And she just is a very naturally good negotiator. And then she built her negotiation team, and there are some ladies, and they are tough as nails. And so I said, you know what? I got to let go of this. And it was painful for me because I thought all of you think you're the best in your firm at something, I'm sure, right? And when you are confronted with the evidence that you are not, it is time to make a decision and make a change. And trust the process and trust the people. Hire good people, train them, let them do what they do best. And that, it's painful, but then that's how you can take a step back and really have an impact for your firm and have a great practice that you're proud of. I can blow up a deal really easily, right? I can go in there and sometimes I got to be the guy who comes in because it's my name on the door that says, we're going to do this deal, and I sanction it with Excalibur. But no, most of the time, my team is crushing it, and they're way better than I am. And that was a painful realization for me, but I'm glad I was able to look at the data and say, you know what, you're better than me at this, do it. And that's it, let go.
What's the percentage or the ratio between pre-suit and in-suit cases at your firm?
Let me tell you what changed my litigation complexion, and that was tort reform last year. We filed 2,500-something cases in 3 days. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about over $1 million in filing fees alone. It was awful. So a lot more of our cases are in suit now. But the ratio before the tort reforms, we had actually really good bad faith law in Florida. The ratio before was honestly 95% of our cases were resolved pre-suit. I mean, it just was. Now it's a lot more like 3 or 4 to 1 pre-suit, in-suit. But most of the truck cases, most of the commercial cases, we have ways that we transfer the cases, so it could be catastrophic depending on the injuries, the policies and things. I mean, almost every truck case is going to go into suit. Every catastrophic case is going to go into suit. So, but I can tell you that just anecdotally, it's probably 3 to 1 maybe, pre-suit, suit. But again, we've got $10,000 limits, so a lot of the cases are settling, pre-suit at $10,000.
When you're at that stage, when you're trying to move past the point of knowing all the details about everything, what was the one thing that helped you the most?
So I'll give you a couple pieces of advice on that. We did some training on that, because if you look at the DISC profile, right, you familiar with the DISC? Everyone familiar? The cautious, DISC, drivers, interactives, stability, and cautious people. I'm a perfectionist, I'm not cautious, but I understand that. Over 80% is failure. If you are over 80% dealing with the details, that is utter failure as far as management goes. You must force yourself to stop working at 80%. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of know when you got 80% of the information, you need to shut it down. If you go past that, you got to say, I failed in this task. So I'm just giving you like a mental picture there to say, I can't be perfect. And the corollary of that is, perfect is unrealistic. It has to be good enough. Fortunately, my wife is a pusher, and she's like, good enough for her is a whole different standard. So she and I together, like, she brings me back down from perfection, and I drag her up to 80%, right? So we work together with that. So get someone in your office who's not perfectionistic and give them a little bit of control, and they'll help talk you down from what you need to know. The other thing is, like, do a realistic threat analysis, because we as lawyers are taught about how everything can go wrong 100 different ways, but really 99 of those ways, it's never gonna happen. Figure out the one thing that's gonna be a problem and deal with that. It really is, you've got to just do a realistic threat assessment and say, my wife says I'm paranoid, and I can really think about everything that can go wrong, and I gotta dial that down. So figure out, what are you really worried about? Are you worried about looking bad? Because that is an unrealistic approach. You got to be worried about, what's the threat to the firm, right? Like, what's the real threat? Am I going to get sued? Am I committing malpractice? And then to echo Jan is so good with the core values. My clients come first. Over my revenue, everything else, my clients come first. And if you do that with whatever decision you're making, you're going to be fine. Number two, my team comes second. So, like, if you're making a decision matrix, core values, training your team, if that's a decision matrix, you're going to be okay. Like, they could screw up other things, but if those things are in line, you're going to be protected, generally, 99% of the time, and that's what you're really worried about.
What are the standard controls you have over costs and expenses on files, especially for a smaller firm than scaling to a larger firm?
I'm a Christian, I'm a praying man, and God always shows me the people who are making bad decisions, right? Like, it's funny, like, I get a call from a court reporter saying, hey, so-and-so ordered these 14 transcripts, and I'm like, no, it's a case not set for trial. I'm like, what? The what? And they just happen to call me, right? So first of all, put your faith in God, that's important. But I also have I hired somebody who was formerly employed by the Empire as my controller. That's a joke. She worked for Darth Vader. She was her controller. She fly specs everything. Like, I can't get an expense through the firm without her looking at it. So this is a tangential issue, but hire people who are not like you. My controller is super, super tough, and she's always on everybody about the expenditures they're making, and if it's an issue, she comes and talks to me about it. So a couple pieces of advice there. Number one, hire somebody who's really good at fly specking the bills. You will hear about the problems. And number two, basically is along the same lines, don't hire people who are like you. She's really good at other things. She is not somebody you want to have a drink with, but she's definitely somebody who you want watching your bank account, right? I love her, I do, but I love her for doing what she does, right? Love you, Raquel.
When hiring or making the decision to hire a COO, when you get to that spot, where's your mind at? What are you thinking? What are you analyzing? And how do you get there?
Do not hire people who are like you.
Don't hire your friends.
Okay? Don't hire your friends.
Do not hire your friends.
Do not hire your friends. Don't hire someone like you. The key to scaling your firm, I think one of the biggest keys, is learning where your weaknesses are and your strengths, and hiring somebody who complements that. And the COO, none of us, Jan probably is, Jan definitely is, but I'm not a good COO. I'm a CEO. Jay Henderson, I took the profile. I'm a CEO profile. That is not a COO profile. You need somebody who's a pusher, somebody who doesn't have a lot of empathy, somebody who's going to crack the whip over these attorneys who are all stars, and they all, you need somebody who's going to push. And that's different than what I am. I'm the nice guy. I'm like, hey, so don't hire people like you. You're going to meet somebody who's a COO, and you're going to like them. That's not a good hire. Hire somebody who is different than you, and make sure that Jay Henderson approves, and you run the disc profile and all those other things, the testing that Jan does, tremendous testing. We do too. We learned it from her. Find somebody who's going to feel. Gino Wickman wrote a book, Traction. There's a couple other books out there. I like Vern Harnish stuff too. Like, they have profiles. You can find that out there and read what a good number two, what a good COO does. And so that's what I recommend you. Don't hire somebody, and this is for any position, don't hire somebody who's like you, unless you're trying to hire a CEO. And then you want to hire somebody just like you. But the truth is, don't hire your friends and don't hire anybody like you. They will let you down, and you're going to lose your friend, and you're going to be right back where you were in a year.